Once I fully understood this chart, all of my addictions went away. Now, when it comes to people trying to get rid of their addictions, what they try to do is they try to use willpower. But the thing is that willpower will never work when it comes to getting rid of your addictions. And the reason why is because willpower is a finite source. You do not have an infinite amount of willpower. No one does. One day you could have poor sleep. One day you could have gotten into a fight with your girl and your willpower will be less that day. Your willpower changes day by day. So what makes you think that you're gonna have the same amount of willpower every single day? Exactly. You wouldn't be watching this video right now if willpower actually worked for you, because that's what you've been trying to do and that's what everyone tries to do. But when you're using willpower, essentially what you're doing is you're swimming upstream. You're going against the grain. What you need to start doing is you need to start going the easy route, swimming downstream and understanding this chart. Now, this chart helped me essentially get rid of all of my addictions. I don't smoke weed anymore, and I used to be the biggest stoner that I've ever known in my life. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in about like 2 to 3 years. I don't even drink coffee anymore. I don't watch explicit content. I don't vape anymore. None of that stuff. And I could attest that all to this chart. Now, what is this chart? I call this chart the chart of truth. It's kind of like a cool name that I came up with, you know what I'm saying? But what is this chart? Let me explain. So this chart is kind of a representation of where you are at in your life. Kind of, I guess you could say, your frequency or vibration level for all the spiritual weirdos out there. But everything on this chart is kind of like a representation of you. So plus 100 right here, you can kind of see that it's numbered from negative 100 to plus 100. Plus 100 kind of represents your dream life. So think about what your dream life would look like. Think about, you know, what type of wife you'd have, what type of career you would have, how much money you would be making, what type of car you're driving, where you would be traveling at, where you live. Just think about whatever dream life that kind of comes to your head when you think of having some sort of dream life. Now, at the bottom here, that's rock bottom. And you could probably kind of understand what rock bottom means. Think about a crackhead walking downtown who's addicted to fentanyl, bent in half like that, scratching his face like a crackhead. He's kind of mentally fucked up. That's what I mean by rock bottom. Now, as you can see on the left here, there it says expansion and then contraction. Once you go up above this 0 point threshold, you start getting an expansion phase. Once you go below, you start getting into a contraction phase. And expansion and contraction is basically kind of self-explanatory. When you expand, you're getting better, you're getting bigger. Once you contract, you're getting smaller and you're shrinking. Now, as you can see these words here, each level, each number kind of represents where you are at in your life, your characteristics, your habits, your personality. Now, let's say you were to have some sort of addiction. I'm just going to use weed addiction, for example, because that was a big addiction when it came to me and myself. Like, I was addicted to weed for 7 years straight. It took me 5 years to get rid of my weed addiction, and nothing worked until I understood this chart. Anyways, this is the level that you're at when you're at a weed addiction. And just to be clear, this kind of goes with any sort of addiction that you have. If you're addicted to explicit content, you know, cock and ball torture videos, if you're addicted to vaping, whatever, any addiction that you might have. So let's say your addiction falls on the level of negative 60. So let's say you're addicted to smoking weed and you are at a level negative 60 in this instance. What are the habits, or like what are the characteristics of a person who's at level negative 60? That person probably has bad habits, emotional immaturity, bad mental health, and they're a weed smoker. They're addicted to smoking weed. So think about that for a second. People who are usually in this contraction phase or this contraction sort of mindset or contraction level, they usually have bad habits. They usually have emotional immaturity. They're usually not the best person. They have bad mental health. They're not good at, I guess you could say, processing their emotions. They're not like healthy people. They eat like shit. They eat processed foods. They eat McDonald's. They eat a bunch of sugar. They have a bunch of different addictions. Once you hit this contraction phase, once you go below this negative threshold, you're more susceptible to the entities that are kind of like bringing you towards these addictions. So when you see someone who's an addict, essentially, they have a bunch of other bad habits that come with it as well. And the reason why is because they're in this contraction phase. When you're in this contraction phase, you are essentially a magnet to all these negative things. And the lower you go, the more the lower you go, the more you're susceptible to worse things. So the lower you go, like down here, if you're at rock bottom, if you're like a fentanyl addict and a crack addict, you're more susceptible to be addicted to a bunch of other drugs. You're probably not just a fentanyl addict, you're probably a heroin addict, you're probably a coke addict, you're probably an alcoholic. You're more susceptible to all these different negative things. You're literally, like what I said, you're like a magnet. So it's the same exact thing. Someone who's a avid weed smoker, they probably have bad habits. They probably don't go to the gym. They probably don't read books. They probably don't do any good habits at all. So that's the one thing that you need to think about. Once you're in this contraction phase, you are essentially a negative magnet. Now, this is what people try to do when it comes to getting rid of their addictions. They try to, one, just get, shit, my bad. They try to just get rid of their addictions. So as you can see right here, negative 60. This person is a weed smoker, a weed addict. And let's say someone was like, oh man, I'm done with this weed smoking thing. I need to change my life. What they do is they get rid of the weed habit. They just stop smoking weed. Cold turkey, stop smoking weed. Then where do they go to? They kind of ascend to a negative 40. And the reason why they only ascended to a negative 40 is because what? Read this. They still have bad habits. They're still emotionally immature. They still have bad mental health. The only thing that changed between the negative 60 and the negative 40 is the fact that they stopped smoking weed. But the thing is that they're still the same exact person that they were when they were smoking weed. The only thing that changed is the fact that they don't smoke weed anymore. They're still the same exact person. They still have bad habits. They still have emotional immaturity. They still have bad mental health. So this person at negative 40, they're more primed. They're more likely to fall back to that negative 60 right here. Why? Because they're still the same exact person. A person who has bad habits, emotional immaturity, bad mental health, they're more susceptible to the entity, and they're more susceptible to being seduced by the entity of weed. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by being more seduced by the entity of weed? Think about your addiction, think about your addiction as some sort of like female, right? Think about your addiction as some sort of female that tries to seduce you. Certain people would be seduced by certain people, but certain people would not be seduced by that same exact female. Because what these addictions are doing is they're seducing you. They're kind of like what I said, they're like women. They're like entities who are trying to seduce you to use that substance. So when you are this person at a negative 40, you are more susceptible to being seduced by that addiction. Just keep that in head. Keep that in your mind. You're more susceptible to being seduced by that addiction. So of course this negative 40 person is going to go back to a negative 60 just because of the fact that, like what I said, they're the same exact person. I know I keep saying this, but it's really important. I need to drill this in your head. Now, let's say that this person at level negative 60 were to actually fully change themselves. Let's say they're like, you know what, I need to change my life. I need to change my identity. I need to change who I am as a person. What do? They quit smoking weed first, and then they move up to a level negative 40. Then what they do is, you know, my mental health isn't the best right now. Maybe I'm going to pick up some meditation. Maybe I'm going to start reading books. Maybe I'm going to try to like speak to a therapist or something like that just to get my mental better. What happens? They start moving up the chart. They now move to a level negative 20. Level negative 20, let's just say you still have bad habits, you're still emotionally immature, but you're getting better, you know what I'm saying? Like you're working on yourself, you're developing more things. Maybe he starts introducing the gym. Maybe he kind of gets into the gym. He's like, yeah, you know, I'm going to start working on my physical health. I'm going to try to eat healthier. I'm going to try to do this, do that, pick up some good habits, start reading some books, you know, learning about, I don't know, manifestation or some shit like that, learning a bit more spirituality. Eventually, he starts moving up to a negative plus 10. Sorry, I said negative plus 10. I mean positive 10. Eventually, he starts moving to a positive 10. Now, the thing that you need to realize is about being in an expansive state is that you are a positive magnet. Before, you were a negative magnet when you're in the contracted state. But when you're in the expansion state, what you are doing is you are literally a magnet to all these different positive things. So naturally, you're gonna want to start adding more positive characteristics to yourself. So eventually, he gets to the point where he's at a positive 40. Now, what is a person who's at positive 40? They have good habits. They are emotionally mature. They have good mental health. They are healthy. They go to the gym. They read books. They're on their shit. They're on their purpose. They're trying to build some sort of business. They're trying to thrive in their career. They have conversations with people, and you guys get what I'm saying. They're just an expansive person. They're a thriving person. So this person going from a level negative 40 to a positive 40, he did a whole complete 180. He flipped himself as a person. So what makes you think that this person would be susceptible to being seduced by the entity of his weed addiction? He's just not going to be. Because the thing is that once you get in this expansion state, you feel so good that you don't want to go back down. Once you experience what it's like to be in an expansion state, an expansive state, you don't want to go back down to the negative state. You just don't. So this person right here, he's not going to be seduced by the entity of smoking weed, of weed addiction, because he's a completely different person. He's not the same person that was down here. The reason why this person at level -40 was, susceptible to going back to his addictions is because of the fact that he was still the same person that he was when he was, addicted to the substance that he was taking. But this person is a completely different person. This person is not susceptible to being seduced by that entity anymore. Think about it like this. This is another analogy. If you guys watch Breaking Bad, there's this kind of crack whore who looks all fucked up. She looks like a crackhead, and Jesse is just dealing with that on the side. You know what I'm saying? Like Jesse, he's doing his thing. He's dealing with her, that sort of stuff. Then throughout the series, Jesse kind of levels up as a person. He starts getting money. He starts, doing his thing. And I guess you could say metaphorically, he kind of levels himself up. And then he meets Jane. And Jane, she was like, a pretty good-looking female. You know what I'm saying? So do you think at that point in his life, do you think he's going to be susceptible to being seduced by that crack whore that he was with in the beginning? No, he wasn't. Probably not. No. So that's the thing. Once you go up here, it's really hard to get sucked back down. Really hard to get sucked back down. Because think about it like this. Let's say you were to start off by driving a 2001 Toyota Corolla that has 300,000 kilometers on it, and it rattles every single time you drive it. People look at you like, damn, that's a fucked up car. There's rust on it. It's just falling apart. It's not fun driving that car. But the thing is that that's the only thing that you're used to. That's what your reality is. You're used to driving that car. You haven't driven any car that's better than that before. Now let's say you kind of level yourself up, you start making money, you start getting money, and eventually you're able to buy a Lamborghini. You drive that Lamborghini for a decent amount of time. Let's say you start driving that Lamborghini for a year. You start getting used to the speed. Every time you go down the street, there's people looking at you, there's girls looking at you, it's getting attention, you feel good, you're swerving down the street, you know what I'm saying? Just driving a Lamborghini, driving a fast car. Eventually you're gonna get used to that car. So let's say that car breaks down one day, and now you're forced to go back to that 2001 Toyota Corolla. You're gonna hate that 2001 Toyota Corolla because you're used to the speed of the Lamborghini. You're gonna think to yourself, oh shit, I don't like driving this car anymore. And now that I've experienced the Lamborghini, I can't drive this 2001 Toyota Corolla anymore. It's the same exact thing. So let's say this person that was at a +40, he goes ahead and smokes weed again. He's gonna start to think, oh shit, I don't think I really like smoking weed because the next day I feel like I have brain fog. And since I'm a healthy person, I don't like having brain fog. Since I care about my mental health, I don't like having brain fog. Since good habits is something that's actually important to me, I don't like having brain fog because of the fact that I can't go to the gym the next day. I don't have a good workout. I don't have a clear mental to work on my business. I find it harder for me to read books because my mental is not clear. But a person who smokes weed down here, that's their reality. They're used to having brain fog. They're used to feeling like shit. They're used to having fucked up brain chemistry because weed fucks up your brain chemistry. And this is exactly what I went through. Once I got to an expansive state, whenever I smoked weed, it kind of reminded me what it felt like to be an addict. It kind of reminded me what it felt like to feel like shit. So I don't like smoking weed like that. And I just don't like smoking weed. I naturally just was like, yeah, fuck this. I can't do this anymore. I have to go to the gym. I have a business to run. I got work to do. So what you're essentially doing is you're adding all of these good habits. You're developing all these good habits and changing as a person and then getting yourself to that expansion state. And naturally what's gonna happen is all your bad habits are just gonna fall away. You're just gonna kind of outgrow your bad habits. You're gonna shed your bad habits. And this is the easiest way to do it. So what you need to do is you need to, one by one, start getting rid of your bad habits and start adding good habits. And you don't have to use willpower to get rid of your bad habits. The easiest way to get rid of your bad habits is just start adopting good habits. If you're down here, start going to the gym. Start reading books. Start taking your mental health seriously. Start doing meditation. One by one, keep adding good habits to your life. And eventually what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna climb up this ladder. You're gonna climb up this ladder to an expansive state. And once you climb up to this expansive state, you're a completely different person that you were than when you were down here. And when you're a completely different person, like what I said, it's hard to succumb to the entity who's trying to seduce you. So what you need to do is you need to outgrow your addiction. And the way you need to outgrow your addiction is climb your way up this chart. And like what I said, you don't need to get rid of your bad habits like this. All you want to do is just start adding good habits. Don't worry about quitting weed with using willpower like this. Start adding good habits. Start going to the gym. Start, reading books, whatever, taking your health seriously, eating healthy food. And once you add these good habits, what you're doing is you're climbing the ladder. And once you climb the ladder slowly, you're going to get to a point where you're like, shit, I don't want to climb back down the ladder. I don't want to regress down that ladder. So to boil this down, to end this video off, what you need to do is you need to outgrow your addiction. You need to start adding good habits to your life, and you need to get to the point where these good habits kind of like make it so there's no room for these bad habits. And naturally, your bad habits are just going to fall away. You're just going to shed these bad habits and you're going to outgrow them. It's going to get to the point where you feel as if, oh yeah, like that's just something I used to do in the past. Like you used to play Minecraft before, probably. You used to play Fortnite before. Do you anymore? No, because you outgrew them. You just don't really care. You just don't care to do them anymore. It's the same thing for me with weed. Like sometimes I'll think like, yeah, whatever, I'll smoke weed. But every time I do smoke weed, and I'll smoke maybe like once every 5 months, 6 months, maybe like twice a year, something like that. I'm like, yeah, I don't like doing that anymore. Like, I feel like shit the next day. I can't go to the gym the next day. My workouts are shit. I don't have the mental clarity to run my business. So naturally, you're just not going to want to do these things anymore. Instead of using willpower and scratching your face like a fucking crackhead, you're just going to be like, yeah, it's something I just don't do anymore. I kind of outgrew that phase of my life.